Well, hey everybody, welcome again to the production channel. This is the place where we get to talk with everyone in the industry, lighting, audio, video, show callers, and everything. And so just really excited about today. But before I get into that, Clem, welcome, my boy.
Yo, greetings, man.
How you doing, dude? You been traveling a lot? What you been doing lately?
Oh man, I just came from a show, home for a while. I like that work-life balance. I've been home for about a week and a half, just getting back into daddy mode, preparing for another show, and just go back out to AV camp and do it all over again.
That's cool, man. Well, again, I'm really excited about today. It's all about show callers, but real quick before we get into that, Clem, for anyone who's new to the production channel or who's like going, what in the world is this? Give our friends a background on what it is we're doing here.
Well, hopefully they've been listening. We've already had some episodes out, so for all the new listeners, the production channel is an opportunity for us as technicians, as people in the industry. Maybe even somebody outside of the industry, maybe a spouse, a friend, a partner who just wants to understand more about our lifestyles on the road with our road family, our friends, the experiences that we had, how we got into this business, where we want to go with our careers, where we want the industry to go. All those are type of things that we're going to just dive into with this podcast series of the production channel.
That's it, man. And honestly, we try to frame and format this thing in a way to where it's something you can listen to on a travel day, right? Yep. When you're sitting there on your Delta flight with your status and you got your upgrade, you're super excited, you're 3 Jack and Cokes in.
Or you're delayed at an airport.
Or you're delayed, or literally the most worst opposite scenario of that, yes. Either way, there's a place for production channel. Well, cool. Let's get into it today. Today I'm joined by Jon Allen. Welcome, Jon.
Morning, gents. Good morning.
Yeah.
So a little background on Jon. Jon is really a professional show director and caller, also technical director, owner of Technical Designs. The cool thing about Jon is his background is really ranges from theater to concerts, and really now is a leader in the corporate events and show directing space. So anyways, that said, I just want to kind of say again, welcome, Jon. Jon's a good friend of Shoflo's. We've really been working with him over the last couple months and year, just in figuring out the best way to bring change into the industry. And just after experiencing some time with Jon, knowing that that's a real passion for him, that just really made sense to get him on today's call. So again, welcome, Jon. I guess to kick us off, dude, as we like to ask everybody, how in the heck did you get to where you are? You're at the front of house calling massive shows in stadiums and in massive ballrooms. How in the world did you get there? Where did you get started?
Man, that's this podcast is such good timing because just yesterday, the director of the little community theater, I was 10 years old in Northern California when I started acting, and I kept in touch with this cat, Cliff Beyer, and he came over yesterday to my house and met my kid. He's 70 years old now, and it really gave us a chance to talk about how theater and that beginning kind of has run like a thread through our lives for sure. So I started acting when I was a little kid, and then started doing lighting. With building little rheostats and stuff, and doing
that's cool
punk bands around the Bay Area, and doing the high school theater scene. I was still kind of performing and doing lights, doing all the technical stuff. And then I went away to college thinking I was going to step away and do another thing. I was going to teach actually, but I ended up connecting back with Arden Fingerhut, who's an old school lighting designer at Broadway that some people will remember. She was amazing, and she showed me everything that I didn't know, and started putting me on a path towards a more holistic way of thinking about design. And then I started doing rock and roll and rigging. I was a climber growing up, so rigging seemed like a great way to make good money, not work too hard, and see the world, So I toured doing that, and then slid into corporate, man. I wish I could even tell you how that happened. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know how you go from punk to corporate. That one's a pretty good jump.
Only in America.
That's right. Did you have long hair when you were in the punk band scene?
Man, after high school, yeah, I had hair down to my waist. It was crazy.
Not so much
good money. I will send those pictures around for good money. Yeah, Clem and Steven know me. For right now, there's no hair.
No hair.
No.
Yeah, that was the thing, man. Corporate makes a lot of sense for people, especially for freelancers. Like Clem mentioned, I think, which really resonated with me, coming back and getting off the road and switching over to daddy time. I do the same thing. I'm a single dad. I've got a 15-year-old daughter. And that flexibility that we have with our schedule, on the surface of it, a lot of people look at us and think that you travel all the time and that must be really hard. And it is. But there's also upsides to it, because when you're home, you're home 24/7, 100% attention on your kids, and it can make it's a different style of parenting, but it can make for a really sweet experience too, I think. I don't think it's something to shy away from. I know guys that, that hit our income level in the so-called real world, and they see their kids, after 7 o'clock at night, after dinner for an hour and a half. They might see them for one day on the weekend. It's all really rush. They're always distracted. Because their job is encroaching constantly. So for me personally, whether I was wired this way to begin with, or whether being in the business for, it's 39 years now, has pushed me this way. Like, I don't know which came first, but for me, even with all the self-doubts that you have as a parent, it works pretty well.
Yeah. I know one of the struggles that I've had, coming out of college and finding my way into sports broadcasting. I was a camera operator for the Orlando Magic, for 15 seasons.
Orlando Magic. Yeah. I was there last night, watched them.
Yeah. And then found my way into this industry, and that grind and that run and go chase that dollar and all that. And, it consumed me. And it finally took my wife and the family dynamic and all of that for me to realize that, you're focusing on the wrong things. You're missing what's important out of life, chasing that dollar, or chasing the mindset of, I have to work now because I don't know if I'm going to have when the next gig is going to come in. But I've been fortunate enough and blessed to have those gigs always come in, but I'm still chasing. So
absolutely, man.
I know you had mentioned earlier. Yeah, it doesn't. But I'm trying to change my mindset. And what made me think about all of that is how you were talking about the family time, but then you were also talking about somebody that taught you the holistic point of view, and like the holistic point of view of lighting. But what about the holistic point of view of the industry?
No, I agree, man. It's funny because I think Steven has seen this, but I have I have this list going of, I don't know, it's probably like 25 ways to be a better show caller, right? That I kind of use when I'm talking to people getting in the business, and I pass it around amongst friends. There's some funny stuff in there, but there's some, I had kicked it to a producer last week on a gig, and what he wrote back was, wow, that's a really holistic view of what we do. And I'm like, right. And I hadn't really thought about it that way before, but it's true. You affect people in many, many more ways than just what we're dealing with to get that cue done. And as we've seen, in the last month, I know of 2 cats in our industry who unfortunately decided to take their lives. And there's probably more out there that I haven't heard of, but 2 people that I knew. And it happens in our business, and I think it's worth taking a second and just remembering that even if you're just touching somebody on headset, just seeing them on a show, just seeing them backstage for a second, maybe you get to catch a meal, although that's pretty rare for me to be able to do. But, maybe you can sit and talk. I like to get deep fast with people, and it's worthwhile, man. Like, you get more than you ever give if you sit and talk with people, and it took me a really long time to learn that, man. I was kind of an awkward, shy kid growing up, and when I got in the business, I was hyper focused on what I was doing because I wanted to be really good at it. Yeah. And it probably delayed my development as a person, moved my development in the business, but it delayed my development as a whole person longer than it should have. And that's part of what I try to teach people that are coming up. They don't have to focus, like you were saying, you don't have to focus so much on chasing the dollar.
Yeah.
We're fortunate though. We're fortunate because
we've
got the opportunities and we're making money, and that's not true for a lot of people. So
yeah, we put our time in, and we've allowed ourselves to. I feel like if you're true to yourself, if you're a good person, that will shine out. And if you care about what you want to do and be good at what you want to do, then the opportunities, the work will come, the opportunities will come. Now, from a show point of view, like as a caller, as a stage manager, how do you? Because obviously, they get stressful. The environments get stressful. The producers, not the producers, but sometimes, producers too. They get on edge. The client, they get on edge. How do you stop that stress from coming down to the rest of the people on headset?
Yeah, it's that's important to me, and it's I think of it like an hourglass, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm the neck of the hourglass. So all sorts of craziness can be happening upstream of me, and my job is to make sure that it doesn't affect the crew's functioning. Like not only their personal reactions, but also, selfishly, I want this show to go well. I want a guy to execute. I want 100%, 110% effort from everybody. And the right way to get that isn't by berating people. It's not by overreacting. It's not by passing along stress. It's by making sure the crew knows that you've got their back and that you're going to set them up for success. You're going to give them the information they need. They're never going to wonder what they're about to do. And when the situations get crazy and stuff fails, that you have a path out, right? Like you are not looking to them to solve this for you. And that's really important to me. So I don't have these clients anymore, but I've had clients who prefer a different style of management, who don't feel like stage managers doing their job unless they're yelling at the crew constantly. That they've got to squeeze the crew. I've had creative directors like that. There's a big creative director. I won't mention his name. Steven's heard me complain about him before. He's known far and wide as kind of the stereotypical, horrible, throw stuff, berate people personally kind of a guy. And he and I've had conversations about this management style. And I not only do I not believe it's effective, I also cannot live in that world. I won't contribute to that world. So I use a lot of humor. I tend to swear a lot on headset.
You do, but you're doing very good right now, John. You're doing very good.
Thank you. I'm really trying hard.
Get a cookie. Get a BFC.
Like we try to keep it casual until it's not, right? Like as long as things are flowing, I don't require a sterile intercom environment. I mean, it's certainly not crazy, but who are we to pretend that this isn't our lives, right? We're on headset. That's it. It's 12 hours a day.
And I think, John, with the interesting thing with your role and your responsibility, particularly, again, focusing in as the show caller, but, well, actually, even as a technical director, but still keep it on show caller, you are the bottleneck between the sort of chaos above production and your show crew and the crew in terms of when we're on headset and when we're in rehearsals. We're all listening to you. You are the beat, right? The drum beat right there for the entire thing. And so if you respond to that pressure above you and let it affect you, we feel that we hear that because literally we've got you in our ears. I don't think that a lot of people outside of our industry even really understand that. I find it it's a cool thing when I walk into even an arena. Maybe it's a big show, it's a big conference, whatever it is. And maybe you're in walk-in, and I'm sitting there thinking, what I hear right now, like as a member in the audience or whatever, is one thing, but there's like this second universe of conversation going on, right? Like it's almost like you could play off of the spiritual world versus the physical world. It's like there's this entire other public channel of conversation going on that someone is either like working out logistics or they're bashing somebody on the stage.
And I'm like, I want to be on it. I want to know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm a horrible audience
I know.
member, man.
But I think that like that's a cool thing, and the idea that it's likely 80%, if not more, one person's voice in 36 people's ears, or even more, and that role falls on you. It's just not a small thing. So if you didn't realize that, you have a lot of pressure. So side note, there you go. And then I guess just more, how much have you thought about that in terms of, for me, and I'm sure Clem can relate to this as a video director, I can sense when you have control and when you don't.
Oh yeah.
When you're focused,
I can feel that and I hear that. Yeah. And I can also tell when you're taking care of us and when you're taking care of yourself.
That's right.
And so talk to us about that. Like what goes through your head on all that
It's
stuff.
a huge responsibility, man. And I'm wired to think about best practices in everything that I do. All my weird hobbies and all the stuff, in my normal life and certainly at work, right? And so I think about best practices, and I'm not going to say I'm 100% all the time. Of course not. I fail always, and you have to have compassion for yourself, number one. Which also you have to have compassion for other people failing, and knowing you have to trust that everybody wants to do a good job. That's the most important thing that I feel like, and in those few times, right, when we've all run into it, when you really run across somebody who is way in over their heads and won't admit it, like won't ask for help, or is just massively like, is just one of those personalities that is not going to be able to perform, then you have to have enough production chops to figure out when you're going to let somebody go and replace them. Because the number one thing is, the show's got to happen, right? And while you want to be as kind as possible in our processes, you can never let that take over. I mean, I was laughing. I have a good friend who's a lighting designer, and he used to tease me. He's like, hey, man, you're kind of like Jekyll and Hyde here. You're really cool, and then suddenly something snaps. And my kid is super funny. She'll say to her friends, she's like, yeah, my dad's cool until he's not. And and initially, like the first time I heard it, I was sort of bugged by it. But then I realized I actually believe in that. I should be really cool in the production process. And then when someone isn't giving me what I need, isn't cool to me back, like isn't performing, I don't understand why I should continue to be cool about it. Right. Like you should get what you give in this world. And I want to always give the best I can. And I hope that other people can. I don't necessarily always expect it, but I hope it happens. And that feedback loop of reinforcement is just a really sweet thing, man, when it happens. And the great thing about our business is it's all in the service of telling a story, right? Like that's how I talk about calling shows. We're telling a story for the audience. And that's what's so beautiful when we can craft a moment. And it's me grasping at existential straws kind of, because, let's face it, for a lot of what we do, there's not a lot of story there. There's the client's story that we're telling, but we're not crafting high art with what we do. But we can craft a moment within a long day of grind that we can all feel good about, right? When that, when that music dives and the lights drop out, and when, you just take this little moment where you feel that breath intake out of the audience, and then you drop into that opening video and you feel that volume kick and you watch the audience lean forward. And I mean, that's really like the sweet moments that are still out there to be taken if you're willing to concentrate on the details. Yeah. That's what's important.
Now, I've got to say something as you're describing this, because you and I worked together on a Microsoft show at the Orlando Convention Center, Orange County Convention Center.
Yeah.
And we were in a round. The stage is in the middle, and we were in the round, and then there was a screen, a perforated
little drop down
scrim. I really don't want to call it a screen. Yeah, scrim. There you go. And there were people dancing inside, and Microsoft was telling this story of their history on the video in the middle, and then the screens. They used the round to kind of support that. Now, as a projectionist, and Stephen, you'll kind of understand this a little bit too. But as a projectionist, I give so much in trying to. I tell my story through the screens. Everybody sees the screens, and I want my screens to be perfect, converged perfectly, colors to match perfectly all the way across, because I understand this is what people are going to see. Now, right. I give so much into that, but then I have to go backstage, and I miss the opening number. So you're describing that opening moment, right? And fortunately for that show, I didn't have a true position like during the show, so I was actually able to see the opening number, and I saw how beautiful and impactful it was. But there's so many times that people backstage don't see that, so they get lost, or not lost, but they don't have the opportunity to feel what you just described.
Yeah, they
and
don't
it's
get the
different.
Payoff. Yeah. No, because because the payoff only happens when everybody backstage is so focused on their piece of it. And that's what I grew up doing all those positions, right? I was graphics at TVL, for God's sake. I was camera op, camera director, audio lighting. I have I think that it makes me a much better show caller than I would ever be otherwise. I'm not saying it's the only path towards being a good show director, but for me, it helps me to know, and I can't keep up, obviously, with all the latest technology, but it helps me to know what other people are going through so that I can guide the process more effectively. And so when I'm, I feel like what you're saying, everybody's got to be focused on their thing. But the sweet spot for me, what I love about it is, if I've got the right crew, I don't have to worry about any of that. I literally say words and crazy shit happens. It's the best job in the world. It's
how very Genesis of you. Dude, he spoke, and
I only did it in 4 days. I only did it in 4 days.
Yeah. Oh, Jon Allen.
Man, can I tell you a really fast story about that? I was doing a really heavy show, and for some goofy reason, they'd put the translation booths on the same level as control. I was up about 15 feet. Right behind me, right? So all these glass windows, and they're not far behind me. I've got maybe like 5 feet of space. And I have a really horrible tendency on big shows for big moments to stand and wave my arms around, right? I look really stupid. But I conduct shit. So these little ladies in the translation booth were coming out at the first break, and they were laughing. And we're talking, and they're like, it's so funny because you point at a screen and the screen changes. It's amazing. and then they start giving me a hard time because I dance a little bit as I'm calling these shows, right, when there's heavy music going on. So I'm like, can you guys just not look up anymore? I don't want to be embarrassed. It's bad news.
But
that's cool. That's how it feels. Yeah, it's really cool.
That sounds cool. It sounds beautiful. There's been opening numbers where I've been able to be a part of it. And, people who know me, I'm an emotional guy. Okay. And I have no problem admitting it. Yes. I'm 6'7". I'm tall. I'm black. I've got the bald head. And yes, you may find me in the corner shedding a tear because it's so beautiful.
That's good stuff, brother. That's good stuff.
What's interesting is, I think that, so being a, live video director for particularly corporate events for so long, I'm always backstage. And honestly, the bigger the show, even the further away I am from it, the bigger the show, I'm either in in the tunnel in the MGM Grand somewhere or whatever, very, very far removed. And I've thought about this, and I've talked with people about this before. I think that there's a benefit, like there's a pro and a con to that. The pro is I have a clear disconnect from the actual largeness of what it feels like to be in the room during big moments. So for example, I do these really, really big shows with jewelry design. I've been doing them for years. and they're all about they do these IBM shows, and they it's all about the big opener. And so, we'll rehearse it for 3 days straight, and it's necessary because, they're beautiful, beautiful openings. But at the end of the day, for me, the difference between a rehearsal and the show is very different in terms of personal pressure backstage, because I've just been experiencing the entire thing through a 4-inch virtual window video, tile on a multi-view that I'm looking at. So my sense of that room being filled with 16,000 people this time versus last time, I don't get it because I'm so removed from it.
I never thought about that. Yeah, man. That
yeah,
makes total sense.
And I think it plays to my advantage, but it also anyone who knows why, one of the big reasons I even sort of have chosen a different route with this industry, moving into more of this vendor provider with Shoflo, is because I got burnt out of it, and it's because I didn't care. My passion wasn't there. It's not because I didn't care. I mean, I loved what I did, but it was just more of like I didn't feel close to my work. It was, a art, and, people like Jon Allen and other, show callers, you guys want live video directors. That way, when you call IMAG, you don't have to call every individual cut inside of that call. No. You call IMAG, and what you're really saying is, Stevie, do your thing.
No, I'm like, I'm your assistant director, man. Like, I'll remind you where people are coming from and what's coming up if you haven't had a chance to make notes. Right. But yeah, I need you. Absolutely.
And I think that like that I measured as an art for me. But, I guess all that to say, when I did some touring with some bands, and I got to go out with LMG's tour with Maroon 5 and Train. And so for those shows, I'm calling cameras, and it's all in shed tour, right? It's all amphitheaters. And I'm on the stage, right. My video switching console or whatever. And so for me, right there, I just look to my right and I see 16,000 people. And as you got more into the night and the lights are going on, and so there are these moments where if I took a live shot of the audience, I could like turn to the right and feel the audience light up with energy and excitement. And then as I take it away, I could see them like long for more, right. And so there's something to be said about your role there, Jon, being out in the driver's seat. That is a special thing that I don't think most people get to see. Honestly, it's usually just the show caller, the producer, the A1, and the LD. You guys are like the only ones who ever get to experience
you just
that.
gave me another reason to be grateful. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Now, speaking of being grateful, art and shining light on something and lighting joy. What outside of work gives you that? What do you look forward to going home to?
Oh, shit, man. Me? I mean, honestly, it's my kid. She's rad. I mean, if you ever end up on headset, like people have to suffer through. I try to be cool about it because I know how boring it can get to listen to people talk about their kid, but yeah, my kid, I mean, it's just been she and I, for the most part, with some other personalities thrown in over the years, but I've been divorced from her mom for a long time, and so my kid and I are close, and, I always, she's 15, and, I always figure like, oh, this hug before bedtime, this will be the last time. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always grateful for the next one, but, yeah, I get to hang with a pretty cool, like, she's a classical violinist. She writes and performs slam poetry.
Nice.
We dye her hair a different color every month. And I'm just teaching her how to drive right now, an old manual Land Rover. And
nice.
Yeah, she's cool. But, you can't, like, the other thing is you can't focus, like, your kid has to have room, right? Your kid has to breathe. So I come home, and I've been a pilot for a long, long time. So I try to get out flying.
I love that. That's so
Wait,
cool.
a pilot? You said pilot?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've been pilot for 20 years, but I just started gliding too, which you guys actually down there have this amazing glider port about 30 minutes away from Orlando.
Wow.
Yeah, then I'm going to check out this winter. I went and looked on that Microsoft show when we had that early day. I went and checked it out, and it was pretty cool. So there's I have a lot of, weird hobbies like that. I work on vehicles. I got an old motorcycle. I just started learning how to fly fish. I mean, I keep my days pretty busy.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I also work. My shift in the last 2 years has been to really work half-time when I do work, like sort of do a week on, week off when I can arrange it that way. And I take the summers off. I do one show a month in the summers when Liz is out of school. And then I tend to take most of December off. It's pretty easy because our business is a little bit slow. I might have rehearsals for CES or something, but or for something in January. I mean, that's the reason I kind of keep my hand in doing other stuff and still TDing and drawing shows, is because I like to be able to make a little change when I'm not on the road.
Right.
It's kind of nice. Yeah.
Now you mentioned something before we started recording about an opportunity that you had to teach. Like how do you kind of take that passion that you have and place it on somebody else's heart?
That's a load, brother.
Hey, man, you said you like to get deep, man. Come on. I mean,
that's right.
I'm Dr. Deep. Let It Flow right here, man.
I'll tell you, I've always taught one way or the other. Whether it was an activity, a sport, climbing or sailing. I've always, taught here and there, and because of the best practices philosophy, I'm always listening to people who do stuff better than I do, or do stuff differently than I do, and making sure that I integrate that into what I'm doing. Right? Because
explain the best practices for people who don't know. Explain that.
Well, like what's like in any given situation? I mean, people often say, "Oh, there's a," I don't like to say that skin the cat thing because that's kind of cruel. But like, there's 100 ways to do something. You know what I mean? Like people say that, and while I believe in everybody's right to do everything the way they want to do it, and everybody's got a different style, I think that there's certainly for production, and this is, true in my flying, true in sailing to a certain extent, like once you know a lot about something and can consider everything, like once you have data, you can figure out the best path. I wish you guys could see me right now because my hands are going crazy. Like you can figure out the right way, like a way that's even if it's slightly more effective, like if it's slightly better, if it's slightly kinder, if it's whatever it is, you can figure out a way that's slightly better, and that's best practices, man. Like you can do things in a way, once you think about it, you don't have to give in to the way you've always done something or the way you've always heard it be done. So, like, for instance, really stupid things with show calling, like when I do warnings, when I do setups for something, I always end on an up note, right? Radio lights 121, audio 2, and switch 13. And I wait there, I sit there. Because everybody listens, and then you take that pause, and nobody's going to do anything else until you say go.
Yeah.
And like little tiny things, even with paperwork, I believe firmly that there's, and that's why I got so involved with Shoflo and Steven and Brian and you guys, because like I love the flexibility with your system, because I can arrange that in a way that lets everybody make it be their best practices. It lets them see their data in the right way for them. And that, I think, is really helpful because we live in such a data-dense production world. So for me, best practices is about that. So you were talking about that teaching thing. What was crazy last week is I ended up on a show where, and I don't, you talk about big shows. I'm happy to do small shows. Like I'm past that ego deal where you want to only do the biggest, best, blah, blah, blah. I've done most of that. I mean, if somebody wants to call me up to do the Olympics, maybe if it's not in Rio, but somewhere else, shit, of course. But, like, for most of what we do, big or small, like I actually charge the same. So it doesn't really matter to me at the end of the day. Right. It's more fun to have some meat on the bone. I get it. But, I don't like being bored. So I took this gig last week, and in my head it was, this is a show that's going in the college fund, right? Like this is why work is called work for a reason. And nobody's going to pay me to stay at home. I'm going to take this gig. And it was with a brand new crew of people. I really didn't know many people on at all. I knew a few. And I was doing a 4,000 person offshoot broadcast. Like we throw back and forth. We had some hosts on our stage, but we were really not doing a ton. And during the day when I was listening in, remotely on the general session rehearsals, so I knew what was going to be happening for the next day, my room turned into a breakout room, right? So we had one of my deck managers decided that she was cool calling the breakouts, and all for it. But she didn't have a lot of experience. So what I got to do, which was so amazing, is two things happened last week that were beautiful. One is I got to listen to another person do what I do for a heavy show. So I'm listening in to that caller, work with that crew. I'm on an ISO to them, like we can bullshit around and talk about what's happening and make sure everything is cool between us, but I'm also hearing all of his stuff go down with producer upstream and the crew downstream. I can feel him. It's very rare that we get to do that in our business. I don't often get to hang with other show callers. I'm not often on shows with them, right. And to be so intimate with them in a way that and he's heard me call other shows in the past, and like I hear things he says that are exactly how I say it, and and vice versa. You know what I mean? Like that's a really nice synergy. So that was really cool for me, and I made sure to acknowledge it in the moment, to say something to him about it, and to say something to myself about being grateful, because I went into the show thinking it was going to kind of be a crappy week. I'm in it for the money, but now like I get this thing, and then it helps reset you, right? And so. Then I have this woman who's going to call the breakouts, and I'm able to guide her through making her cue sheets. I'm able to listen to her call rehearsals and give her feedback about things that are not working, things that are working, like massage that process. Watch her take that input, watch her make changes, and see her start to self-educate, right? Which is what that's what you want with everybody. You want to give them the tools to self-educate. So then I watched her build on what we had talked about and start to blossom. And about 2 days in, the A1 hit me up on ISO after she had done a call and then a quick VO, and it dumped us into the start of the show. And it's not a lot, but it's a lot when you've never done it before. She had confided in me that the night before the first show, she had anxiety, sweaty palms, was really nervous. And then we get 2 days later, this A1 lights me up and he's like, man, like she has come a long way. 2 days ago, that would not have happened. And that sounded, that was perfect. I'm like, I know, it's rad to watch someone do that. It was amazing. And and we never get to teaching. I have friends who teach stage management. There's a lot of graduate level programs out there, and my understanding is they mostly teach Broadway style theater stage management, not really what we do, although they'll do a seminar about what we do or a module on corporate show calling. I'm supposed to get in there and teach with her. And this is at UC San Diego. I think Lisa Porter, Stephen, and she's awesome. And she teaches a great program, and she's very holistic about all of this. But I think a lot of those programs, we're a minor. I mean, this genre of corporate stuff that we do is everything to us, but not a lot of other people know about it, so they don't get taught it, which is a bummer, because in terms of bang for the buck, it's definitely the best way to be a stage manager. Other than high level television, you're not, which is more like camera directing. You're not going to find a lot better income out there. Like, you're not going to make what we make calling theater, unfortunately. But in my experience, maybe I'm wrong. Somebody can call me up and tell me I'm wrong. But I think that often you teach, but you don't get to watch somebody do it at the same time. Like, you teach and you say, okay, go do your thing, and then tell me how it felt afterwards. But to really be a part of that process in the moment was a huge gift too, man. Definitely.
Yeah. And as you're saying all of that, it makes me think so much about program, a series or whatever that I've kind of started where, I'm a projectionist, and I've come up with a curriculum, as if you will, of teaching projection.
Nice.
And it's called Projection 101, just down to the basics. Like, we're going all the way back. I don't want any geometry in there. We're just talking about, I don't want any, when I say geometry, like warping, I don't want any warping in there, just basic stuff. But in that, before we even get to touching the projectors, the whole first part about it, of the seminar or the workshop, is about the theory of projection. And changing that mindset from going from a stagehand or going from a projection assist into the projectionist mindset, and understanding, taking ownership of what you're doing, understanding the art of it, understanding that, one thing I like to say is every pixel matters. When you're doing that overlap, every pixel matters. Now, on the other side of that, it's also talking about, for me, when I say every pixel matters, you mentioned this before, that relationship that you establish with people on the crew. If you think of each person on the crew as a pixel, every single pixel matters. That's so what are you doing to shape that pixel, to help that pixel to mean something, to stand out, and to last, to have that long lasting career in this industry? Or if it's not meant to last, how will they transition into something else, but always remember that moment that you had with them?
Oh yeah.
It's like life projection for me. It's so much more, man.
Well, and I want to just say, like, it's two ways, right? Like, those guys are giving something back to me too. Mm-hmm. It's not a top-down thing. And a lot of people mistake show callers as, it can come across as a very arrogant position. And I want people to, and the people that know me, it's important to me that they understand that I never think of it that way. I actually think of it as I'm in service, right? Like, I've told people what the expectation is. I've given them the tools and the time and the feedback from front of house, deciphering what the producer wants, the client wants. Like, I'm telling their story. It's not my story. I'm telling somebody else's story, and I'm getting everybody on the crew to get there. But I'm just like, I'm the voice of timing out front. And if I abdicate that and let people be, like, take their own timing. I mean, and obviously, like, in moments, for sure. Like, I always say, like, you don't have to do what I say, but I'm never going to get mad at you if you do. But if you're not going to do what I say, don't be wrong. Like, just be right. Because I'm going to get distracted with the client. I'm going to, screw up. I'm a human being. I'm going to fail. But, cover me. I'll thank you publicly. Like, it's really important to publicly thank someone when they bail you out. I will, buy you a beer that night, whatever. But I don't expect people to do my job for me, because I think that's wrong. I'm being paid good money to do a job, and to sit there and let other people, take cues on their own. They don't really know. They're backstage. They don't know how they're integrated with stuff. I think that's me kind of screwing up the whole process, man. Like, that's not me being a good person for that crew. So I hope, like, when I sit down and talk to guys, like, I'm not out there saying it's my way or the highway. I'm the only person who knows what to do. You guys just punch buttons. It gets never like that in my head. And I can understand it maybe getting interpreted that way in the heat of the moment, because things have to be said, right? It's one show, one voice. Like, I have to decide what's going to happen, and I have to take that responsibility. But it's never because I think that other people can't do it. They just aren't being paid to do it that day. I am. So that's my hit on that.
That's awesome.
Knowledge dropped.
No, man. Yeah. Seriously, that's huge. That's the perspective that's just an example of one of the perspectives that we're trying to get together here on this sort of podcast. So, Jon, thank you, man. This was huge. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, guys, man. It's a pleasure always to talk to you guys. Thanks for diving a little deep with me.
That's awesome. All right. Well, for everybody else, we're going to wrap this episode. But again, stay tuned. Keep tuning in. We're Going to keep bringing different people from the industry, whether it's broadcast, sports, camera, video, lights, audio. We're going to bring them, and we're gonna interview them and bring them to you guys. So with that, Clem, I appreciate you, brother. John, I appreciate you, and we'll catch you guys next week on the production channel.
Chatter.